We're now ready to take a look at the touch-up tools and touch-up features that we have available to us here in Camera Raw. In this particular lesson, we're going to take a look at Camera Raw's equivalent to the healing brush and clone stamp, and also the red eye tool. In the next lesson, we'll take a look at Camera Raw's equivalent to the burn, dodge, and sponge tools. Now, I'll let you in on a little secret. These tools are kind of elementary. They're okay for a touch-up here and there, but they in no way compare to the touch-up tools in Photoshop. So what you need to do with your RAW files is open up in Camera Raw, make your exposure and your color adjustments, and then open it up in Photoshop to do your touch-up. I'm talking about touching up people's faces, products with scratches on them, etc. All the things that we did back in the lesson on the image manipulation tools. Healing brush, spot healing brush, patch tool, etc. But I'm going to go ahead and show them to you here just in case you want to use them. As I said, they're okay for something quick, but they're not going to be okay for extensive touch-up. If you could do everything you could do in Photoshop right here in Camera Raw, you wouldn't need Photoshop. Now, we're also going to be doing this touch-up on JPEGs. We're going to find that you can open up JPEGs right in Camera Raw. Now, just because we can do that, don't think that JPEGs suddenly become RAW files. They're not. They're still JPEGs. They've had processing applied to them already, right in the camera, as soon as you took the picture. For example, when dealing with the JPEGs, if you set your camera to outdoor white balance and the picture was actually taken indoors and now you have a color cast, that color cast is actually built right into that JPEG. That's why it's sometimes a little bit harder to get rid of that color cast than it would be if it had been a RAW file. See, with RAW files, it's like magic. It's like you can go back in time. Right in Camera Raw, if you set it wrong when you took it, well, you can hit the little drop-down box on the white balance and pick indoors, and it's like you're taking it with the indoor setting right from the very beginning. There has not been any white balance processing done to that RAW file. And that's one of the reasons I suggested using RAW files when you're shooting in lighting situations you're not sure which white balance to choose. Now, with that being said, why would you really want to open up a JPEG in Camera Raw? Well, to tell you the truth, the only thing that I can think of is that you just don't know how to use Photoshop, and the only thing anyone ever showed you was Camera Raw. Well, you took this course, so you know how to use Photoshop. Now, the main reason I'm going to be using JPEGs for this, particularly the red eye example, is because I don't have any other pictures of red eye other than this one here of Sasha. And of course, we have our old trusty wedding couple. A couple friends of mine will take a look at the healing brush and clone stamp on them. Now, to open up a JPEG or TIFF or PSD in Camera Raw, you have to come down here to the icon in the mini bridge and right-click, and you'll see Open with Camera Raw. Now, I'm going to click up at the top of this because this menu drops down. If I were to click at the bottom, it would drop down off my recordable area. So I'm going to right-click. We can see the option down here, Open in Camera Raw. Now, I'm going to come over here and zoom in on it. And we'll slide it so the girl's face is here. And the tool we want to use is this spot removal tool. If I click on it, we can see there's not a whole lot of options. We can choose for this to work as a healing brush or a clone stamp. We'll start off with the healing brush. The radius is nothing but the brush size. And the opacity is the opacity. Now, for this tool to work, you can click anywhere on this image. It really doesn't matter. I'll just come over here and click. And what we're going to get is two circles, a green one and a red one. The green one is going to be placed where the source point should be, which would be the good spot, which is exactly what we'd get if we had a real healing brush and we alt-clicked. And the red circle is going to be dragged over to the spot that you want to fix. So I'll put my cursor over here. I'll get the green spot, put it on the source point, and I can turn up that radius a little bit to get a bigger brush. Then you simply grab the red circle and drag it over to the area that you want to fix up. It's that simple. The problem comes if you have lots of things you want to fix up, you got to keep doing this process over and over. I'll click somewhere else. I'll drag the green circle over to the source point. I can even use the source point I used for the first one. Drag the red circle over to the spot that I want to heal, and it's done. Click. I'll hold my space bar down. Green circle goes here. Red circle goes here. So you see, you can go on and on. It's going to take a lot longer than with the regular healing brush. With the regular healing brush, you just alt-click once, then you click, 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 click around on all the different things you want to heal. Now, if we turn the opacity down, we would actually reveal some of the area that we healed to begin with. We can see the little spot coming back a little bit. Don't know why you'd want to do that, so I'm going to turn it back to 100%. And if I were to come over here and select another tool, we would see that those little circles go away, yet the effect remains. If I come back to the spot removal tool, we can see that the circles reappear. If I want to activate them so that I can edit it further, just come over here and click on them, and you'll see that we've reactivated both the red and the green circles. If I decide I want to get that spot back, just hit the delete key, and that will remove the red and green circles. Now, I guess the only good thing you can say about this is that everything is removable or undoable. Again, it's almost like an adjustment layer for the healing brush. Now, is that really worth anything? I don't know. I've never known a zit that I ever actually wanted to get back. So if I'm in Photoshop and I get rid of it, good riddance. I probably don't want to see it again. But if all you have is one spot that you want to heal here on the image, it's probably easier to do it here with the spot removal brush than to open this in Photoshop. Also remember, corrections in Photoshop can't be saved back into the raw file. So all of these corrections will be saved in the XMP metadata. Now if I want to turn this into a clone stamp, I can do that as well. I'm just going to reactivate one of these original healing spots, and I'll come over here and choose clone. And what I'm going to do here is just swap this around. Put the green circle on the mole, and you can see that we clone the mole over here onto the forehead. Now this is a pixel for pixel clone, just like the original clone stamp. You can see not only do we get the mole, we get the lightness of the area as well. So we get this light circle around the area. Now if I go ahead and click done here, we can see that we get an icon that shows that we've made some adjustments here with Camera Raw. Now, unlike the NEF file, these adjustments are not saved in an XMP file. They're actually embedded right into this image. So if you decide you don't want those adjustments, it's a little bit tricky as to how you're going to get rid of them. You can't do it here in MiniBridge, and you can't do it in Photoshop. You're going to have to open up the regular bridge. You're going to have to find this thumbnail, right-click on it, and you'll see an option called Develop Settings. From that menu, there's 4 choices. One of them is Clear Settings, and that'll actually clear this icon out and get you right back to where you started from. Now again, we're not covering Bridge in this course, but if you're familiar with Bridge, that's how you would do it. Now I'm going to come over here and open up number 16, Red Eye, again in Camera Raw. I'm going to have to right-click and choose the Open in Camera Raw. That'll open it up. And the way the Red Eye tool works, first off, is this tool right here. All we have is a darken in pupil size, just like in Photoshop. And just like in Photoshop, they don't tend to do anything. I'll double-click the zoom tool, pull that down, grab my Red Eye tool. Now, this doesn't work quite as you think. You'd think you'd come over here and just simply put that little plus sign and click on the eyeball. Nothing happens. In fact, you can hear the big Microsoft warning that something's gone wrong. Tells us that we're unable to find Red Eye. Be sure to drag out an area that includes the entire eye and some of the surrounding face. So what you do is you click and draw a little square around it, and it finds the red eye for you. If we come to another tool, those little outlines go away, and we can see that yes, indeed, the red eye has been done away with. Now, if I were to open this up in Photoshop, you can see that the red eye is gone here as well. So, no more red eye. Not going to save that. And again, we have a little icon that shows that we've made some adjustments here in Camera Raw. One thing I want to point out, as soon as we made adjustments here, if we try to double click this again, it's not going to open up in Photoshop, it's going to open up in Camera Raw. We would then have to hit Open Image to open it up in Photoshop. If you want to get around that, remember it was one of the preferences, one of the very first things we talked about here on our lessons in Camera Raw. Down here it says, automatically open JPEGs with settings, which means if you have that little icon that shows that some settings have been changed using Camera Raw, if you double click it or open it in whatever manner that you choose, it's going to open up in Camera Raw. If you want it to open up in Photoshop, disable JPEG support. That way, when you try to open up a JPEG, it's going to open up in Photoshop regardless of whether or not it has any previous Camera Raw settings applied to it. To open it up in Camera Raw, you'd have to right-click on the thumbnail and say Open in Camera Raw, either here in the MiniBridge or in the regular bridge. Now I'm going to leave this set to automatically open JPEGs with settings in Camera Raw because, as I mentioned, I don't really open JPEGs in Camera Raw to begin with, so this option is not going to affect the way I work one way or another. And hit Done. So those are Camera Raw's version of the healing brush, the clone stamp, and the red eye tool. As we can see, the red eye tool works just like it does in Photoshop, so I'm not going to open up a Camera Raw image in Photoshop just to get rid of red eye. But the clone stamp and the healing brush leave a lot to be desired. Unless I just have one or two spots I want to touch up, I'm going to open up the image in Photoshop and do my healing brush related touch-ups over there. Now, the next lesson, we'll take a look at RAW's version of the Dodge, Burn, and Sponge tool. The tool is called the Adjustment Brush, and that's what we'll take a look at next.